climate leadership has to come at the level of the city's top leaders,
Yeah.
be it the mayor, be it the members of the legislative assemblies, be it the elected representatives, be it the municipal commissioner, and be it the district collector and everyone.
Hello and welcome to the U20 Dialogue series. I'm your host Punit Gandhi from NIUA, and we are excited to bring to you a series of discussions on various urban development challenges faced by cities across the world and its potential solutions. This month, we will talk to experts working in the urban sector on the theme of encouraging environmentally responsible behaviors in cities.
Hello, and welcome to the season 2 of Understanding the Future. I'm your host, Punit Gandhi, and today we have with us Shri Kunal Kumar. He's the Joint Secretary and Mission Director of Smart Cities Mission at the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. He will help us better understand how can we enable climate action in cities. Welcome to the show, Kunal sir.
Thank you, Puneet, for this very exciting series that C-Cube has set in place.
Thank you, sir. So let's start our initial and the first question with how do we see cities in India developing in sustainable manner over the next decade or something?
Cities, by their very nature, are aggregators of sorts. They aggregate human resources, they aggregate material resources, energy resources, and they are the places where economic activity, living together,
Yeah.
and the future of a country like ours, especially, depends on how this spans out. This
Yeah.
actually happens, and in the process, cities affect and get affected
Yeah.
by climate change in many different ways.
Yeah.
What you described in your question as sustainable development is something that is very, very important in this context. One, we are on the cusp of very rapid urbanization. There is
Yeah.
ample research which shows that once countries reach 30%,
Yeah.
I'm not sure of the cause, but they tend to urbanize very fast beyond that
Yeah.
marker of 30%. Second, um, post the COVID pandemic, whenever we reach that situation, there would be a demand for high economic activity and a lot of rebalancing of global value chains and networks will take place, which will, I presume, give us a lot of new ventures and businesses coming to our country, thereby also leading to more economic activity in our cities.
Yeah.
Third, even for the rural sector, it's very important that our cities make it on a sustainable economic and inclusive development path, because whatever resources are generated in our cities are actually going to be flowed back into even the rural areas, which is why city development is not only important for economic growth in urban areas, it's important for overall growth of the country.
Yeah.
Having said that, sustainable development is a very it has to reside in the consciousness of the city for it to be actually embedded into its programs and initiatives.
Yeah.
A city has a government, it has its community, it has stakeholders, it has multiple people who are engaged with the operation of the city working and functioning. And all of them have to imbibe a certain sense of sustainable development
Yeah.
for it to really become embedded into each of their things. So I think on your question, each area of work, whether it is governance, whether it is development projects, whether it is use of technology, whether it is about resource efficiency, whether it is about deciding on new housing, new mobility, new street lights,
Yeah.
any fragment of the city's work, everywhere,
Yeah.
I think it's important that the climate lens gets embedded.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree because eventually, with this congregation of people that happens, we are going to use more resources. I think, and that is where my next question comes in. That while municipal corporations help in expansion or SPVs help in expansion of cities, while more people come in, what is their main role in developing such systems for the cities, and how can they develop it?
So they have to be the anchors. In fact, if you see the name for a Mahanagar Palika is a Palika of the city. Essentially, it has to be the anchor. It has to be the guardian of the city.
Yeah.
And the SPV is nothing different from the ULB. ULB is the mother entity of the SPV also.
Yeah.
This is where climate governance has to take shape. And this could take shape in multiple different ways. It could take shape in the form of a department. It could take shape in the form of a new SPV. It could take shape in the form of existing SPV having a different, vertical working on it.
Yeah.
But I think all of these are basically technical ways of looking at it. Overall, climate leadership has to come at the level of the city's top leaders,
Yeah.
be it the mayor, be it the members of the legislative assemblies, be it the elected representatives, be it the municipal commissioner, and be it the district collector and everyone.
Yeah.
So there has to be a consensus among them as to what course the city is going to take, and this consensus has to emerge after detailed dialogue with a lot of stakeholders. Now, this
Yeah.
is not an easy process for the city to decide that tomorrow's future for our city will not be car driven, but would be more driven by non-motorized bicycle and walkable cities and stuff like that. Is a leadership decision. It's not an engineer's decision.
Yeah.
It's not a technical decision. So whether it be municipal corporations, SPVs, departments, verticals, cells, the
Yeah.
leadership has to come from the top. And these cells have to work in an integrated fashion across all government departments and also incorporate in their functioning
Yeah.
adequate feedback mechanisms and partnerships with community organizations and other private organizations who are willing to contribute, who have ideas, who have the wherewithal to actually work with everyone together to take the city in a direction that is best fit for itself as far as sustainable development goes. So multiple different ways of working, multiple different ways of coming together can happen, but the core of it is that leadership has to develop. And I think through the climate smart cities program that MoHUA is trying to drive,
Yeah.
people may see it as a technical program on assessment and formation of departments and cells, but I think it is very important for people to see it as a program for developing climate leadership in our cities,
Yeah.
and therefore drive localized actions
Yeah.
through that leadership in whatever way is suited for the city to move ahead, whatever governance style. Uh, so the form is not important, the function is important. The function is providing climate leadership, and the form can be best suited to the city.
Absolutely. And so coming to then the next question is lines of how we have developed now climate smart cities assessment framework, which helps cities lead the way in this whole challenge as well. But at the same time, now how can MoHUA be part of this in COP26? What can it do, and what can it represent over there?
MoHUA has to also be looked at as in an integrated manner with all of Government of India's action post the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
If you see the INDCs that India took over,
Yeah.
and they are being implemented by many different ministries. Programs are being implemented by many different ministries to achieve those targets. And I think the National Mission for Sustainable Habitat, the NMSH,
Yeah.
is one of the 8 missions under the National Action Plan on Climate Change. And it's very heartening to know that the National Mission for Sustainable Habitat was redesigned recently.
Yeah.
And the climate smart cities assessment has now become a very integral component of it, and would really act as a yearly progress report on our achievements on the NMSH. So NMSH and the CSCAF have got integrated with each other and would
Yeah.
feed synergistically into each other, so that the benefits of an assessment can then lead to better actions on sustainable habitats, and better actions on sustainable habitats can lead to improvement in CSCAF indicators.
Absolutely.
The CSCF is therefore going to be the fulcrum on which MoHUA's climate actions and MoHUA's support in climate actions to states and cities will be riding upon.
Yeah.
And today, if you see, the CSCF has actually been accepted and worked upon by 126 cities. The plan is to take it to 500 cities in the near future. Of course, the scale up from 126 and 500 is a huge effort, and it would need a lot of partnerships, a lot of scale up in technology use, a scale up in human resources, mentors, experts, and practitioners, all of them coming together, because we don't want to do it for the sake of showing that we are in 500 cities. We really want to actually do some meaningful effort through the climate smart cities assessment and the framework, larger framework. So India's goals are really very huge. The Paris Agreement, and if you see, India is at the moment the third highest contributor of GHGs in the world. Per capita wise, it's very less,
Yeah.
but because the population is very high, and therefore a lot is at stake with what we do in India for the entire world. And within India, I think 70% of the dent in climate change, negative effects of climate change have to happen through actions in our cities, which is where through the NMSH, CSCAF, and work with other ministries and partners, we will keep evolving the framework
Yeah.
to reach those targets in a more efficient manner.
Absolutely. And here, what would you tell cities? Because now they have gone through a couple of assessments. Now they do understand a bit more about CSCF as well. What would you tell them on how to proceed ahead and what to do so that they can leverage the framework to be more sustainable and develop themselves in a better way?
See, the first thing that CSCF has done, which is very path-breaking in itself, is to create a visualization of where your city stands. If it was not there, and a visualization on a common parameter is equally important, because for you to visualize yourself on a parameter differently from other cities prevents you from actually becoming comparative.
Yeah.
But having a single structured comparative framework gives your city an idea of to where you stand on energy, where you stand on mobility, where you stand on water, what you're doing on solid waste, how do you compare with equivalent cities across the country and world, what are the indicators that you should be looking at. And it's actually given a chance to the climate leadership in cities to use the assessment as a city dashboard, where you get a lot of information from different sources coming in. You are able to visualize where your city is, and now the effort has to be in improving those, improving your standing or improving your performance in those indicators.
Yeah.
So you look at guidelines. For example, if you're looking at green areas, and you to look at whichever guidelines, like the URDPFI guidelines suggest an X percentage of green areas will be there and all. Now guidelines are at one level. Sometimes retrofitting new cities you can follow guidelines, but retrofitting cities is difficult. It is difficult to follow guidelines, which is where you then compare with your peers. You could look at different states and different cities within your own states and figure out. So use the climate smart cities assessment very, very efficiently to get accurate data, to align people and stakeholders within the city around that data, to make it source of truth, so everyone then is aligned on the current situation of the city, and then each one's actions, as I said in the beginning, each one's actions contributes. Today, if you are deploying new street lights, whether they are efficient street lights, energy efficient street lights or not, will actually impact the dynamic equilibrium of sustainable development in your city. Whether you do concrete roads, whether you do proper water systems, or you're not doing proper water systems through leakage control and prevention of non-revenue water, everything will contribute to sustainable development.
True.
And therefore, this data will help you align stakeholders. It will align resources. You will be able to create budgets. You will be able to create an appropriate governance mechanism, and then you should constantly improve your performance on these indicators by having the right set of prioritizations. Now, I can, for example, a city is doing very bad on mobility and air quality. And one of the things we need to fix is transport. And within transport, a key deliverable has to be how friendly the city can become for walking and cycling, how friendly it can become to active living, how friendly it can become to public transport, how can public transport become more energy efficient. These are things that we should then focus upon, and then see in the longitudinal survey that happens next year again, how they have been able to improve and benchmark against other cities in the country. So this has to be used as a tool. CSCF is not something that we are, as a MoHUA or a government of India, trying to drive. Essentially, this is a tool that we have offered to the ecosystem,
Yeah.
and as a tool, just like you use your mobile phone for very many different reasons. The CSEF as a tool can be used for many different reasons, as you imagine for your city, to
Absolutely.
impact positive development action in your city, climate sensitive action in your city. So I request cities to take the leadership and build partnerships and collaborations around the data that gets generated, and constantly keep improving their efforts for climate sensitive development.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had previously also mentioned in this interview itself that number of stakeholders are very important here, and that is how we have also been able to develop a whole alliance partner, which has more than 50 organizations in it now. Uh, they have obviously helped a lot to the cities. What would you say to them that more and more such partnerships can build up from ground up, so that there is more climate action that we can see on the ground?
Well, so we will have to have a multi-pronged approach for this to happen. I think first, at the level of the cities themselves, they have to identify relevant stakeholders who can add value to this work. So this could be from the local academic institutions, this could be from local community organizations, it could be from local individuals, and for that matter, students and the
Yeah,
youth, who could actually take up the mantle of working together with the city and its government and its climate governance, whatever form it is, to create climate action in cities. So that's the first level at which this should happen. Secondly, at the level of the
yeah,
state government, actually the states can come forward and help all the cities where possibly they are small cities where they will not have the wherewithal to do it locally, to bridge and come in and fill in the gaps as far as cities are concerned at the level of the states. At MoHUA, through the CSCF and its parent organization, which is created in NIUA called the C Cube, we have to build a network of country. When I say I meant experts, I'm very guarded because I seldom use this word for people who generally call themselves experts. I would
yeah,
believe in calling those people experts who've actually done practical work on ground and speak from. So these experts would actually be practitioners already working in these municipal corporations and SPVs. And we would like to amplify their voice. We would like to see that they then are able to reach out to a wider audience, so that from the experience and the kind of work that they have done, others also get benefited.
yeah,
Then we will have to see whether we can build trust with many other organizations across the country and work with them to create many more partnerships. All the 126 cities, it's very hard to see. But
yeah,
close to 121 cities got to work with different partners, different kinds of partners,
yeah,
and they were able to therefore participate in the CSEF in a much more meaningful way.
yeah,
And we would like to deepen that effort going forward. I would like to invite many more partners, individuals, organizations, like-minded organizations, community organizations, agencies who are working in this field,
yeah,
to let us come together, and create a whole which is bigger than the sum of its parts, and work together towards a common goal which all of us have at the core of this action, is to work together to take our cities and help our city, support them in building climate action on ground. This would also include capacity building. It would include implementation support. It would include support in the generation of peer-to-peer learning groups, interaction sessions, field visits, and all of this has to become possible. And then you will also have to embed yourself in the city teams
yeah,
to be able to work from within and understand the challenges that cities face, so that we're not theoretically working with the cities, we are actually being able to contribute in a more practical manner.
yeah.
So I would really invite many more partner organizations to come forward and engage with CCube and help us and work with us to take this agenda forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, practitioners are one of the most important things. We also feel that, and that is where at CQ we currently build a new Climate Practitioners India network uh, to basically aggregate all that information. Because uh, currently we do have a whole network of organizations, but we also believe that it's important that on ground we know more and more people who do this, so that while anything happens, they can function out in a better way. And we have talked about this through fellowship as well while we were working together, that quadruple helix becomes an important part of this whole discussion, because this is not like that, okay, only one organization can lead such things. So what would you tell citizens on how to actively get involved into this whole ecosystem?
I think one, be actively engaged with the city. Being actively engaged with the city is a two-way process. Many a time, citizens may want to engage with the city, but would not find adequate forums to do so. Which is where I think cities and citizens will have to figure out, and cities will have to provide ample opportunities through online and offline mediums for citizens to be able to engage.
Yeah,
Once that happens, citizens should, especially the youth, as I said, and especially those people who are invested in seeing the good of the city happen,
yeah,
to collectively build a consciousness. It's not about me, it has to spread like wildfire. So it's about me taking it to 10 more people, those 10 taking it to 10 other people, and sooner than later, the entire city is engulfed in talking about these issues and deliberating on it, and sort of a consensus emerging that
yeah,
yes, we will have narrower roads and greater footpaths, bigger footpaths. Yes, we will prefer to travel on public transport, and we will see and support the city in investing in better public transport.
yeah,
We will ensure that the energy that we consume at our homes and offices is reduced, and we gradually move to more energy efficient ways of working, both at and living, both at offices and homes. We would ensure this will ensure that organizations who pay their staff actually proactively give certain benefits to people who, let's say, walk or cycle to work, and therefore
yeah,
maybe consider giving them some concessional loans for buying cycles or whatever, or maybe an extra increment or so, or some financial benefit of a kind to boost such morale. Now, all this is action which will help us amplify and scale up climate action. It's not only about the city government; it's
yeah,
about all actors coming together. Academic institutions can create, fund, research around these topics based on what the city needs, and that research can actually then get deployed as projects in the city. So everyone has a sphere to contribute to, whether it is citizens, whether it is the city. The city can also actually engage youth through internship and apprenticeship programs,
yeah,
and those individuals who are very enthusiastic and want to contribute to climate action in their cities can actually become part of that program, and they could actually become the fulcrum on which the city can drive its climate governance cell.
yeah,
So they can become the hands and legs. While there is a entity which looks into broader issues, they can actually become the hands and legs of going into the community, running surveys, talking to stakeholders, building action, kind of aggregating insights and ideas, and all bringing them all together at the level of the city, and then doing some pilot projects and then scaling it up in the future. I'll tell you the example of the Streets for People program. I mean, we
yeah,
started as a tactical program. Now hundreds of kilometers of footpaths and walkable streets are getting created across the country. Similarly, the cycling program,
yeah,
initiative which started small. Now we've seen about 400, 500 kilometers of cycling tracks being developed across the country. And this is nothing for a country like India.
yeah,
There's immense amount of work that can happen. But the point I want to argue here is among the cities who have been able to successfully deploy these streets or build these cycling tracks and build a holistic vision around cycling are those cities who have actually been able to engage with their citizens and stakeholders better. Had that not been the case, cities would not have been able to achieve this distance. And of course, it is a complex exercise, and therefore, it is not a one-off discussion with citizens and stakeholders that is important. This has to be a very long-term, structured engagement
yeah,
at multiple levels in multiple dimensions. Its conceptualization and its implementation, its monitoring at multiple times in the and multiple stakeholders. Everyone should be involved. So one has to draw. It has to be there has to be a method to this madness. It's not only about calling a bunch of people and asking their ideas.
yeah,
It's about implementing those ideas, getting back to them, and having a team of the community also work in implementing the ideas. It's a 360-degree approach to citizen and stakeholder collaboration that cities will have to develop. So the leadership has to come from cities, but at the same time, I would request everyone in the cities to actually try to find out venues, look for prospects of engaging constructively, contributing to this agenda through building action in your own communities and families,
Yeah.
and constantly being in two-way communication with the city authorities.
Yeah, absolutely. That's important. And that brings me to one of the questions where, as and more citizens will also involve with this whole process. I think one of the important things that will come out is the new innovations that will take place on the ground. Because that will be a back and forth process which will continuously develop new and new things. So, how do we take into account, how can cities leverage those things to make sure that the systems are organized in a way that innovation can be taken up in the cities, which will help again them developing better levels and scores in CSEF.
And the most important aspect of innovation is to first define the problem.
Yeah,
Most of the times, when we talk of innovation, we don't have the problem in mind, but we are attracted towards some of the other solution that we've heard seems innovative. And that doesn't lead us anywhere because the problem is very specific to our place. And unless we really put the problem in a proper, understand the problem in a proper framework, we will not be able to solve it. So cities have to, mm, for innovation to come into cities, it's very important that problem diagnosis is done in a very uh, meaningful manner, where almost like having a big idea crowd and a small idea crowd and crowdsourcing and looking at neighborhood level levels and ward level issues and city level issues. And so there has to be a framework for problem sourcing. Climate governance, the first step has to be for problem sourcing, and it's by fixing those small problems actually. So it's the whole is never going to become emerging in one go. It has to emerge through a lot of meaningful small and large actions. So that's one. Once that is done, then the city has to have a framework of engaging with both public and private actors on those problems and find out ways of solving them. Now, innovation could just simply mean doing the same thing in a different way. Let's say you were making roads in a particular way and you now started making them in a different way. That is innovation. It doesn't mean to be that there has to be some glamorous kind of street light or something very bizarre happening for innovation to be called innovation.
yeah,
A lot of people try to equate innovation with something very, very drastic and changed, whereas
yeah,
just a small tweak in the way you do roads, just a small tweak in maybe the amount of material you use or the kind of material you use can create huge impact on climate. So
yeah,
please be mindful of the fact. So that is probably the incremental. And also when you see something very transformational innovations can also come in, which of course will not be known to you directly. That's the nature of innovation. You can't ask for something you don't know, for
yeah,
which you have to be alert. You have to actually, for example, the city innovation exchange platform
yeah,
or many other platforms can be looked at by the city, from hackathons to engaging with startups to dealing with incubators, talking to accelerators, figuring out people who are working in the domains of the problems that they have identified for themselves and
yeah,
engaging with them meaningfully and then finding ways to actually engage them. It's not only about finding such startups, you actually have to find out solutions to procure those solutions and start to operate them in new cities. Once again, innovation is not equal to startups only.
yeah,
There's another myth about innovations is that it is startups which is equivalent to innovations. Innovations are different ways of doing the same things, finding out whether it could be from an individual, from a startup, from an existing company, or for that matter. Another myth is that governments don't innovate, only the private sector innovates. In fact, it's high time that all of us
yeah,
realize that it has to be government has not only to innovate itself, does need to innovate in the way it governs climate, the way it interacts with stakeholders, the way it uses technology, the way it builds capacity, but also needs to enable innovation by making it easier for startups and the innovator fraternity to access data, to know about what is needed, to see the city's priorities, to access the city's needs, and to be able to build solutions on top of that. So it's a two-way game where you are consuming, you are also innovating, at the same time, you're also enabling innovation. And this essentially is an area where the city has to open itself up like a living lab. A lot of leadership. Again, I come back to the fundamental crux of this issue. If you have a leadership around climate, you would find doing these things easy. If you look at these things technically, you will never be able to. You'll never be able to really ignite or sort of galvanize the entire ecosystem in the city around these things. It is not difficult. Many small and big cities across the world are doing it. We are seeing beginnings in some of our cities towards extraordinary work. Climate Smart Cities framework has shown that a lot of cities have started to push the pedal literally on walkable and cyclable cities.
Yeah.
On many other frontiers, we've seen, the CSEA framework. We've seen 9 4-star cities come up. We've seen now cities are actually knocking at the door of the 5-star. And we've seen many indicators have cities which are already in 5-star. This is not, I'm not saying that this is ideal. We will see the ideal situation is when all these cities will probably be at the 5-star level, but if the journey has started and it has to be sustainable, and for that, fundamentally, we need to have a strong leadership in the cities to make that possible.
Absolutely. So, coming to one of the last questions that we ask everyone who comes on this podcast is on the lines of what kind of skill sets are required? Because we are now talking about a very big systemic change as well that would be required on ground, off ground. And a lot of students would come into picture, a lot of youth will come into picture. So while they learn all different kinds of courses which will be required in the urban development sector, what are some core skill sets or core things they should remember while getting and working on with this system to enable such climate actions?
I think effective communication is something that we cannot disregard, even
Yeah.
though it seems to be a very general thing. But I think a lot of the wind in climate discussions gets lost because it is not communicated effectively.
Mm.
Probably everyone around us understands that climate change is visible, it's happening, but a lot of people are not able to really take it to the next level of action.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that depends on how effectively we are able to communicate. The second, I think, is about use of technology.
Yeah.
And by use of technology, I don't mean only technology for deploying sensors. But technology, for example, can help you connect with your stakeholders. How many people could you connect in a physical domain? I mean, even if you have a big hall and you call in 10,000 people, you'll never be able to talk to 10,000 people, but you can source ideas from 10,000 people using technology very, very easily. So technology is a great connector. Technology will help you assess, visualize your city through sensors or whatever. It can tell you accurate data. It can get you, through APIs. Many other departments and many other private organizations in the city can actually bring in data. It can give you capacity to look at big data and figure out the trends and predictions for your city, and then take meaningful action. It can also help you build capacity. For example, the National Urban Learning Platform or other equivalent platforms help you build capacity. So technology has a very important skill set to have, and not only technology is one skill set, but it has many, many other sub skill sets.
Yeah.
The third thing I think is, I think innovation also requires certain core group of people in the city to understand that domain.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be innovators themselves, but they're going to be the one who will actually bridge the gap between the innovation fraternity and the city. And they are the ones who will get stakeholders in the city together. They will be the ones who will chart the course of how the city formulates problem statements, and how it interacts with stakeholders, how it opens itself up to academic institutions and startups and innovators, and how it sources all the meaningful solutions.
Yeah.
So these are things that, of course, skills are required in every domain. I mean, whether it's mobility, you need skill sets for electrical vehicles, you need skill sets for better management of traffic and transport, you need skill sets for better water management, you need skill sets for better solar management, you need skill sets for better waste management, green buildings. You need to work with existing rating formulas to actually do better green building. So sectoral, you have a lot of requirements on the capacity, but the core, I think, effective communication, use of deployment of technology, and the practice of innovation would be core to everything across sectors. And these are the skill sets that need to be built in by the city.
Thank you. This was absolutely inspiring to hear, and I hope more of the youth can also understand this as an effective skill set to develop such climate actions, either in their cities, in their neighborhoods, wherever they are doing. Any last thoughts you have and you would like to cover if you have missed out on something?
I would say, this reminds me of Mahatma Gandhi's statement: be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
And all of us have to actually think and reflect as to whether we just talk to climate or we actually mean.
Yeah.
And it happened to me also one fine day. I've been talking about cycling and I'm talking of cycles for change. And one fine day, I switched over from my car to my cycle, and I've been coming to work. So my work trips are now cycle
Yeah.
and not cars. So that has given me a sense of contribution. Also has removed this cognitive dissonance from my mind about talking something and actually not doing it. And I would request everyone who's in this call, who's listening to this podcast. I mean, what I'm saying is not enough. Clearly, I'm leading a mission, so I have to do a lot more. But it just started with a small personal example to say that it's in our domains, everyone's personal domains, to start making the shift happen. And small things will aggregate to large outcomes. And each of us has a canvas to contribute. And we should look forward to meaningful ways of doing that contribution and making things turn in positive directions as we go about the day-to-day business of our lives. So that probably will be my final statement.
Thank you so much for this inspiring words, sir. And I hope more and more people do change their outlook and start making at least smaller parts of the contributions, which will eventually lead to a bigger ecosystem change as well. Thank you, sir. So,
Thank you to CQ and Puneet. Thank you.
You have been listening to the U20 Dialogue series. To know more, check out our website u20india.org. Do share the dialogues with your friends and colleagues. Don't forget to follow our social media handles for more information. Stay tuned for our next dialogue.